What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Earlier tonight I got a comment in one of my other videos asking, what does Ram mean and why do people chant it? Great question, and it definitely warrants more than just a quick little typed out reply in the comment section of my YouTube channel, so I thought I'd make a video on it. There's a couple levels actually to the answer to this question. Let's break it down, starting with the relative level, the historical level. Ram was the king of Ayodhya, an empire from a few thousand years ago that governed the region that now would include India. Ram was the son of the king Dasaratha and in turn became the king eventually himself. But there's a lot of trials and tribulations that led him to becoming king that are recounted in the story of Ram called the Ramayana, depending on how you pronounce it. And this is Tulsidasa's interpretation, which is super amazing, semi-modernized, the Sri Ramacharita Manasa. But essentially, Ram is an ideal incarnation. He was born enlightened. He is an avatar of Vishnu. He is one of the main incarnations of Lord Vishnu, who is one of the three primary deities in the Hindu tradition. Part of the Trimurti is what they're called: Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer. So Vishnu represents the preservation of the universe, all of the laws working in harmony. So he represents the governance of creation in that way. All the subtle principles that keep reality binded and functioning so that phenomenon can occur at all. And so in that way, Vishnu preserves the universe. And in a similar sense, the avatars of Vishnu, the incarnations of Vishnu, are known as preservers of humanity, preservers of creation in a relative sense, in a relative manner. So they're said to incarnate when the world is in great peril and needs spiritually reviving, just as is said about all the other prophets like Jesus and Buddha. So I view them all as the same. Ram is equally the epitome of God, as is every enlightened being from every religion throughout all history. And in this way, Ram is a timeless being. Ram transcends time because Ram lives in a timeless state of consciousness and is a representation of the timeless level of reality, the God level of reality, the soul level of reality, of eternity. So the absolute level of Ram, the higher meaning of Ram, is the eternal, is the formless plane, is light. Ram is the name of light. Ram is the name of God. So to repeat Ram is to attune yourself to that timeless God level. Before we fully dive into the absolute level of Ram, the eternal level of Ram, just to continue our discussion of the relative level, he was the king of Ayodhya. He married Sita. She's the embodiment of love. And a major part of the story of Ram is him saving his wife Sita from the evil demon king Ravana. And all of these are actually metaphors. Ram representing the soul level, Sita representing love of God, devotion, love of creation, beauty, harmony, the divine feminine, Ravana representing the ego, Hanuman representing our inner aspiration and willingness to rise to serve humanity and serve creation and be a proper devotee, a proper student of God, a proper steward of God. And there's a lot more to the story, but Ram is only Ram because Ram essentially transcends the identification with his separate body. He was born as an avatar, and so he was born fully enlightened. And a lot of my favorite stories in the Sri Ramacharita Manasa are breaking down how Ram is fully identified beyond his body at such a youthful age that he is playing with those who are ensnared in illusion in different ways and is worshipped by Shiva as God even when he's a baby, and reveals his cosmic form to his mother and other beings casually in his adolescence. But all the stories aside, of the relative level, on the absolute level, Ram is the eternal, formless light. And even the word Ram, the 3 syllables of R-A-M, represent 3 aspects of light, akin to a flame, the sun, and the moon. And Ram can be visualized in his eternal state. God can be visualized in the eternal way as a light, which is the fusion of the flame and the sun and the moon, all in one radiance, one luminosity. And it might be easy to listen to what I'm saying and think I'm talking just about this historical being and that I somehow view Ram as different than Jesus or Krishna or Buddha, but in reality, they're all one. To really understand Ram is to understand that Ram is the eternal essence that underlies all of these archetypes, all of these prophets and avatars and enlightened beings. And there's no separation between them at all. And so the very same self which resides in you and in me is the very same self that was realized in an absolutely enlightened way by Ram and by Krishna and by Jesus, and the list goes on, but essentially they're all one and the same. Specifically as Vishnu avatars, it's a very fascinating journey to read about both of their tales and incarnations and sort of see how there has been this development of consciousness and how these peak manifestations, these avatars of enlightenment, represent the collective journey of consciousness and the movement from a fully enlightened society to the age of materialistic, dense consciousness that we're in now. And Krishna, being the next avatar after Ram, was sort of the indication, the symbol of the movement towards the end of this enlightened era and the beginning of the era we're in now. So these are beings that represent the enlightened era and represent the enlightened state and the formless state and the consciousness beyond illusion. And so to take this back to your second question, why do people chant it? Well, they say the name of Ram is Ram. On one level, by chanting Ram, you're invoking Ram. You're becoming one with Ram. And so in turn, you're becoming one with this eternal state, this enlightened consciousness, the absolute level of existence. And so the reason you chant Ram is because instantaneously you're aligned with your naturally enlightened state. Instantaneously you're connected to the soul level. That's the intersection between the formless absolute and the relative time-bound. You're bringing the formless into form. You're bringing the timeless into time. You're bringing the non-dual into the dual. And so through the mantra, through the name of Ram, or the name of any enlightened being for that matter, you tune into that state of consciousness and you automatically receive some level of operating beyond time. So because Ram is from a previous era, known as a yuga, a previous yuga, he operates on a different scale of time, and when you attune to that level of mind and that level of the soul, which is Ram, by repeating Ram's name and Ram's mantra, then you assume that identification, you assume that consciousness. The actual enlightened beings that take the name of Ram as their practice eventually become fully identified with Ram. They don't have that dualistic notion of Ram is this high being and I'm this low being. No, they come to a point where they're fully identified with the unified field of Ram, with the unified field of light and eternity, which is exemplified through the sound Ram, the name Ram, the principle Ram, and as represented by the being who incarnate and was named Ram. Ram is a mantra that existed before that incarnation. Ram is one of the Bij mantras, or the seed syllables of the chakras, and one of the main seed syllables used throughout all of Sanskrit. And so there's a lot of depth to the meaning of this term. On that literal level, it's used in many words in Sanskrit and Hindi. It represents the third chakra, the solar plexus. Dhyan Yogi, pictured here, and his main disciple, who's an avatar of the Divine Mother, Nandima, pictured here, have both repeated Ram until they became fully identified with Ram. Perhaps you've heard of Shivananda or Neem Karoli Baba. They both repeated Ram until they became identified with a servant of Ram who's Hanuman. You are Ram. I am Ram. Everything is Ram. Every noise in creation, you can consider it the reverberation of the sound Ram. All mantras are contained in the name of Ram. Ram is a perfect incarnation, and so every act of Ram's life was a perfect metaphor about the true nature of reality. If you go back and read his tale, every detail is a specific symbolized cryptic metaphor about the subtle laws governing all of reality. And if you break it all down, all of these epiphanies will flood your inner understanding simply by going over the story of Ram. But don't be mistaken that Ram is somehow a deity separate from all other deities. Every deity is a perfectly enlightened representation of the One. All is one. And in that way, every deity is essentially interchangeable and worship one another. In Indian traditions, they say that Shiva worships Ram as his guru, and actually Hanuman is said to be the avatar of Shiva, who incarnated to worship Ram, and equally so, Ram worships Shiva. Shiva is Ram's Ishtadev, Ram's guru, and so it's this perfect snake eating its tail, interconnected thing. A timeless loop, eternally self-worshipping self, self-blessing self to worship self, because it's all one. You're probably familiar with some of the more modern popularized devotees of Ram, such as Ram Das. It's in the name. Das means servant, so Ram Das is the servant of Ram. Bhagavan Das, Krishna Das, Jayutal, a lot of the great disciples of Neem Karoli Baba, who have continued to spread the name of Ram and spread the deeper teachings of yoga. Outside of just stretching, yoga is a systematic approach to this consciousness I've been talking about, which is Ram. So, to sum it up, it's easy to get lost in the historical, relative meanings of what Ram represents and be confused by all of the ancient Indian rituals and traditions and systems. But at the end of the day, Ram primarily is this eternal level. Ram primarily is this formless level. And to truly repeat the name of Ram and do the Ram mantra is an instantaneous gateway to tap into your essential enlightenment, because fundamentally the soul lives within us all. We all equally have access to the soul level. And when you repeat Ram, you're merging with your soul level. And the soul level that lives in you is the same soul level that lives within us all. It's the microcosm of the macrocosm of God's ultimate consciousness. And so Ram is like a cheat code. Ram is instant access to light and to love and to God. And so if you repeat Ram, 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 it's like eating light. It's like becoming one with light, merging your physical identification with the macrocosm of all of creation. And so they say when you repeat Ram, it's like lighting a candle in the doorway to your house, and in turn the whole house is illuminated. So by repeating Ram, it allows your whole light body to be activated, all of your energy to come to life. I could go on speaking with endless spiritual iterations of the same principles about what Ram really means, but when it comes down to it, only through the practice of repeating Ram and meditating on Ram and focusing on your third eye as you repeat Ram and diving deeper into the tale and the masters who have come to fully identify with Ram, will you come to see all of these profound levels of how you become the Lord of your own universe and balanced in your essential energies when you repeat Ram. Again, it's about the practice, it's about the formless, eternal level, but the relative level is a great example, a perfect presentation of the inner meaning of the absolute level, which can be further dived into if you feel drawn to this tradition. So this is my quick overview of the nature of Ram, the meaning of Ram, and why we repeat the Ram mantra, the relative absolute levels, and the intersection of how Ram lives within you as your soul. So I hope this has helped clarify the unified level of what Ram really means and strip away all of the sense of Ram being separate than you or Ram being separate than any other deity or form of God, or any confusion. Thank you for watching. Until next time, Ram Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram.